Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the No Nonsense Guide to using AI for transport planning today. We have got a great lineup for you today. We've got some great panelists, some great topics, and we hope some really practical takeaways for you at the end of the session. This is part of a series of preparations for the Transport Technology and AI Conference, which is happening on the 30th of January in Birmingham. And this is going to be a fantastic opportunity to meet people from across the sector and hear in detail what's happening with new transport technologies, including AI, across the UK. In particular, I'd call out three things I'm really looking forward to. The first is there's going to be a workshop with the Department for Transport on their transport AI roadmap. So the opportunity to hear all about that, hear what's coming next, maybe influence a little bit what's coming next. Second thing that I'm really excited about, and I spend quite a lot of time in San Francisco, where Waymo autonomous cars have been rolled out and drive around on the streets every day. This is real technology, and it's coming to the UK in 2026. And we're really excited to have Waymo with us in Birmingham at the Transport Technology and AI Conference announcing their plans. And then the final thing that I really love at all of these things is the technology showcase. There's going to be an opportunity to see all of the different technology providers, all of the different people in this space. What are they doing? What are they selling? What projects are they doing? So it's a really exciting opportunity. It is the only place where you can get this level of in-depth knowledge so quickly in one day about what is going on here. So I'd strongly recommend that you join us for this, and there are a couple of special deals we've got on today. So the first is there's a deal with Intelligent Transport Systems whereby if you become a member, you can get reduced rates on the conference. So take a look at that. And we've got a special discount today. There is a code AI 2026, which you can use to book through the website. So take a look at that. Strongly encourage you to be there. I would love to see you there. Final thing in terms of preamble is ahead of this conference, we are doing the UK's first national survey on the state of AI in transport. And here's a little bit about it. So we're asking people from the public sector, people from the consultancy side, and people from the vendor side, where are you up to with AI? What are you doing? What are you seeing? And we're planning to do this on an annual basis so we can actually start to see how the rollout of these new technologies is going across the sector. So the link is going in the chat now. I know you'll be listening to the webinar intently, but if you have a chance to fill in your responses there, that would be much appreciated and help us get a fuller view of what's going on. So that's it. Join us for the conference, fill the survey in. Let's get to today. So I am going to introduce our panel. We have three fantastic speakers with us today. My name's Andrew Browning. I'm the founder of SchemeFlow, which is an AI technology company that helps engineering and planning organizations to draft and review their technical documents and reports much more quickly. I'm joined by Stu Lester from Transport for West Midlands. He is in charge of all things innovation data there. And I've known Stu a number of years. And one of the things that's really interesting about him is he has spent a lot of time working at how to build capacity in-house at TFWM and building that out himself and leading those efforts. So he's one of the most proactive, innovative leaders I have met in the public sector. So we have Stu, we have Catherine Zerftig, who's an associate director at Axis, which is a multidisciplinary consultancy that works across the north of England in transport development planning. And she is a real expert practitioner at getting projects through the stages of planning through to delivery here. And she's taken on a bit of a leadership role in the firm in working out what to do with AI, how to implement it, and how to use it in their day-to-day work. So welcome, Catherine. And then finally, we are joined by Alex Walton, who is an innovation director at Arcadis, and he leads digital innovation across their global mobility business area. So he has a global view. He spent 7 years living in India and he works around the world today. So he can give some real breadth to our discussion today. And one of the other things I really love about Alex's job title is that it has product owner in it. So he is deeply knowledgeable about what it takes to build new technology. And I've always found him to be one of the most thoughtful speakers and people to talk to about these new technologies. So welcome all, great to have you with us, and I shall introduce you to them properly in a second. So here's what we're going to do today. We've done some introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of AI. Why are we talking about this now? Where has this come from? Is this really so different to what we've seen before? We're then going to go through some really practical examples of what is AI being used for today. No hype, no fluff. People are using it today to do this. We're going to go through some of the risks and some of the worries that people have about AI and how to handle them, and then give you some really practical tips about how to get started if you're interested in doing that. And there'll be plenty of time for questions and answers at the end of the session. So there we have it. I will start by saying a few words on the history of AI. So ChatGPT was launched on the 30th of November 2022, 3 years ago now. To some of you who work in AI, that feels like a very long time ago, but this seemed like very new technology that has got mass adoption very, very quickly. But this is not new. You have been using very similar technologies to this for a number of years. So if you think of the autocomplete on your phone, or if you think of the autocomplete when you use Google, this is a very similar technology to ChatGPT. AI has its roots going all the way back to Second World War and beyond. How can we use technology and how can we use digital technology to automate some of the things that we are doing? So it's not new. ChatGPT was a particularly brilliant example which really caught the public imagination. But structurally, why is this happening now? Well, generally speaking, the cost of both data and processing power has gone down a lot, and the amount of data has gone up exponentially. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of this, and I'm going to go to two people who will have a view of the last 10 years. What have we been doing, or where has this AI come from? What did we do before? So I'm going to go over now to Stuart. I'm going to start with you. Tell me about the last 10 years. Have you seen this evolve from big data, machine learning, whatever we call it? Where has this come from and what have you observed?
So yeah, thanks for picking me for the 10 years bit, Andrew. Clearly I'm old enough to have been around quite a long time doing all this sort of
Great.
stuff. Grey hair, grey beard. I think it's a bit of a strange one, really, and I think to a certain extent you see things have changed within, say, for example, the job titles. People who were previously sort of software developers, then into data analysts, maybe, and then right through to data scientists, now to ML ops engineers, things like that. There's been this kind of progression, but fundamentally underneath, as you've said, it's mirrored the kind of growth in data, the growth in compute power over those last 10 years, and we've seen the technology shifts from the kind of on-premise through to cloud-based computing. We've seen in particular, I think that's been really important, and particularly over the last few years, the growth in some of those open standards that people are using now. So in addition to sort of like cloud adoption, things like Parquet files that are enabling people to store cheaply massive amounts of data and to analyze that. So whether you're trying to develop models, whether you're trying to just undertake sort of standard SQL queries, those sorts of things, those open standards have really, really helped to sort of push things forward quite quickly. There's been a consolidation then on top of that. So where I don't know if people work with cloud services now, you can kind of go, there's over 300 services with Google or Microsoft or AWS. They're bringing some of those things together now so that the way people used to work is becoming more familiar now. You log onto a console, look at your database, run some SQL queries. You can even now fire up some of the models that they're making available. Those sort of things are becoming more commoditized. And I think that's just the nature of how technology develops. But underlying all of that, a lot of things are still sort of tools, technologies that people are comfortable with. SQL, for example, being really, really key in amongst all that. So I think that we're seeing the change. It's just being able to adapt it a little bit at a time as we go through those sorts of periods. And inevitably, I think it's just the terminology around it that really kind of gives the buzzword bingo type stuff, salespeople, things to work with. Particularly pleased that when any of that leads to being able to fund and look after some of the underlying things that need doing. So we'll probably come on to some of that later, I suspect.
I see. So that you heard it here first. Use your AI grants to fill your potholes. Great. Let's go to Alex now. Alex, tell us, starter for 10, how long have you been doing AI, artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, great question, and thanks for having us here, Andrew, and good morning, everyone. I guess I first got involved in this field about 10 years ago. And that's interesting because what does Bill Gates say? Things change a lot more over 10 years than you ever realize, and a lot less over two. And I think back 10 years ago. I just moved to India. We were setting up our highways and transport team over there. And pretty much the only thing we were doing was BIM, building information modeling. We had this idea that we should start collecting a bit of data about our designs and use BIM to do it. And that was about the size of it. I find, wow, remarkable. That's pretty much the only thing we were doing. We didn't have any data analytics capability. It wasn't a thing. We just had lots of people doing a lot of work in spreadsheets. So yeah, and then in 2018, so whilst I was in India, I got asked to set up our data analytics capability then. And not long after I got asked to do that, someone asked me if we were going to be doing AI, to which I basically said, no chance, I don't think so, which was perhaps a remarkable response for a data analytics lead, but a couple of reasons. One, we didn't actually have any data at that point as a company that was stored. And if I'm honest, I didn't really know what AI was at that point either. What has changed? Well, three things. One, many more of us, I think, know what AI is now. By the way, the most empowering thing that I was ever taught was essentially it's just statistics with more compute power. If you've ever done correlation, number of ice creams against how hot the weather is, it's a basic form of AI, right? It's making a prediction. And AI, to what Stuart said, it's just kind of a fancy word that makes people more excited. If we said, statistics is really cool now, let's do statistics, we probably wouldn't have so much hype. Because of all of that, a lot more people know what AI is. AI has become a lot more accessible as well. So, we were doing probably back in 2019, 2020, we were using early versions, ChatGPT 2, do kind of data analytics based on text and based on documents. But A, you needed developers to do it. B, very few people knew what it was. So use cases were hard for people to imagine. Whereas, people know and see what you can do. And I think 3, data, the amount of data's changed. So we've gone on a big journey as an organization to store a lot more data. Whether it's our financial data or our HR data, or even a lot of our cost data, like our quantity surveying data. We've now got single systems globally that centralize all of that data rather than different spreadsheets or different apps that talk different languages in every country. And only because we've done that can we now start doing things with that data.
Yeah. So is what we're saying then that this is an incremental development, or is there something radical that we have seen in the last 2 or 3 years, or is there a question of the scale or the pace, or has something really changed, or is this just rebranding?
I think it depends who you talk to. I mean, if you talk to some of the data scientists, a lot of them tell me, "Well, we've done some of this stuff for years, machine learning and optimization." But if you talk to our engineers in the business, then of course, yeah, it changed radically. I think with ChatGPT and really captured everyone's imagination about that. That was a big leap forward for sure.
Yeah, fascinating. I have bit of an analogy. I sort of feel like the words artificial intelligence are a bit like if you were a sort of medieval peasant in England, anything that you saw or observed that you didn't understand, it was probably either God or it was magic. And that was our human way of labeling things that we didn't quite understand how they work. And I often observe people when they talk about AI or artificial intelligence is they're not quite clear what they're labeling, but if it's sort of sufficiently clever or whizzy, then it must that must be AI there. That is very interesting. And do you think sort of big data, machine learning, these other buzzwords that you might have heard, are they gone now? Have they been superseded by AI? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I prefer to think of this as a big digital transformation. Everyone's most excited about AI, and that's the buzzword that seems to kind of win
Mm.
grants and money and internal investment. But actually, I mean, yeah, the development of software tools, the ability to store data, to automate processes. There's a whole suite of technologies. It might be developing a software app, it might be a low code app, it might be robotic process automation, or it might be big data, the kind of data sets that we can buy and analyze, and or AI. And I think success comes from being able to pick the right technology for the right problem. And yeah, being conversant actually in all of those technologies is is the route to success. But yeah, AI is obviously the newest and the most exciting one. But yeah, I think they're all important.
And an interesting point there, Alex, a sort of tip for people who want to be sophisticated about this is use the power of the brand to make your projects happen. So whether there's money available for AI within your company or there are grants available, think about how you can use the excitement about AI to further your objectives as an organization.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of our data scientists have learned that as well.
Yeah. Very good. Okay, so little potted history of AI then, not completely new and radically new, but there is something of a step change in terms of the pace and this new technology here. So how are people using it today? I've got a few examples for you, and then I'm going to throw it over to our panelists. So in transport planning, developers, and by this I mean property developers who are putting things forward for planning, they've started using a number of different tools to scope sites that they may wish to develop. The NIMBYs have also discovered AI. There was a story in The Guardian the other day around you can pay for a service. Here it is, £99 to write a planning objection. Dear ChatGPT, please pretend you are the top planning barrister in England and find the 5 things wrong with this planning application and write me a letter of objection. Local authorities and the public sector starting to use it. I see quite a lot of people experimenting with consultations, summarizing consultation responses and texts there. And then something very tantalizing a few weeks ago, MHCLG putting out a tender for up to £10 million for something to help planning decisions using AI. Transport planners, how do we see they're using it? This is a tool called TestFit. It's about optimizing parking layouts in the United States, called TestFit. And another company called Entra Mobility, an AI company that helps cities and transit operators operate their routing, optimize their routing. This is Beta Streets. This is about visualizing what an active travel intervention could look like, that you can then use these types of images for your consultations, public engagement. This is an example of an AI tool that is used for reviewing technical and engineering reports. We had an incident a few weeks ago where we went to show this to the boss, ran one of their reports that had gone into planning through it, and it lit up like a Christmas tree with lots of mistakes. So lots of different use cases there. I'm now going to throw it over to Catherine. And what I'm going to ask each of our panelists is for one example of how they are using AI in their work or in transport. And then another example from kind of home life, personal life. Are they using AI for anything else like that too? Catherine.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, we're actively using AI in the transport planning world to streamline and enhance our work and help us to do things more quickly, be more productive. So in particular, we've adopted the use of the SchemeFlow software, which helps us to generate our reports, helps us to structure them, helps us to produce our baseline data in a clear and concise format. So in particular, accident data and GIS mapping. And that means that we can prepare our reports a lot more quickly and efficiently, and give our spare time over to our clients to help them with their new sites and help us grow the business. We can focus time more effectively on business development rather than the sort of mundane report writing tasks. And it helps us to refine our technical judgment as well on different aspects of the sites that we're looking at. So far, the feedback on the SchemeFlow software that we are using has been very positive amongst the team. They're finding that, having a GIS map produced, perhaps showing a walking catchment area with some amenities at the click of a button, is helping them to save time on producing the outputs that we are being paid to produce. So yeah, it's early days yet for us using SchemeFlow software, and we're looking at ways at which we can improve that all the time. And what other data can we use in the software? I'd like to think that perhaps in a few years' time we'll be producing traffic flow diagrams at the click of a button, and that would be fantastic, because that as a transport planning consultant, that is something that does take up a huge amount of time. And if we can streamline the way that we do things, we can give cost savings over to our clients, and we can devote more time to actively solving the site specific issues that we are paid to do, in terms of overcoming engineering difficulties and providing the right solutions.
Yeah. Thanks, Catherine. So there's something around letting the technology take the strain on some of the kind of lower level tasks. So I think you said mundane, some of the bits of the job that take a long time but aren't that strategic, or so that you and the team can focus on higher level things. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. So things like structuring our reports, analysing accident data, setting out GIS plans, walking, cycling, site location plans, amenities plans, those sort of things that can actually take quite a lot of time, but are required almost in every single report that we write. So we might have, for example, a solar developer client who's asked us to produce a highways technical scoping note for 10 sites across the UK. And whilst, that is relatively straightforward, the actual sort of setting up of the reports, getting the right plans for each individual site can take time. And having software such as SchemeFlow enables to do that very quickly for, bulk sites that, you might have a couple of sites, as I said, for a solar farm developer, and you'll be able to sort of bash those out really quickly.
Yeah. Interesting. And any other uses of AI not for work you've experimented with?
I have been dabbling with AI, yeah. One of the things that I've been doing recently is trying to diagnose my father's illness. Unfortunately, my dad's in hospital at the moment, and he's not very well. So I've been sitting in the hospital every evening, and the nurse came round last night actually and said he's booked in for a Holter. And I was like, what's a Holter? So I quickly went on ChatGPT and looked at what that was, so I could understand the sort of NHS speak, if you will, to find out what tests they're giving him. There's various different things that I use it for. Absolutely.
Very interesting use, Catherine. I'll probably put a disclaimer to say, don't use ChatGPT to diagnose your you should go to your GP there. Great. All right.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Let's throw it over to Stu now. Tell us about how you're using AI. Maybe start with your informal one that's not work-based, and then let's go back. In fact, we'll go to Stu. Start with your informal one, then let's go to your work one.
Hello, can you hear me now?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Wow, that's all right. It's Zoom is pushing the limits of my computer and IT setup there. It decided to reset itself just as you came over to me, but fortunately came straight back in. So I guess, first of all, from the work context and the sort of thing here is we're still doing a lot of work understanding the value of where we apply all the different technologies that have been spoken around so far. So there's a couple of different things. Firstly, and I think where probably some of our more immediate productivity gains in the workspace are all of those frustrating back office systems and internal processes that you have to deal with where you've got multiple forms, lots of different ways of working, production of briefing notes, productions of reports, etc. And we're going through an experimentation with the Microsoft Copilot world there because that's our corporate IT kind of approach, etc. So there's a lot of idea creation, I think, across lots of different parts of the organization about how to use it, deploy it, where that best value is, and then some metrics to kind of go, is it really helping us or is it creating extra layers of problems? How trustworthy is it? Some of the work we're doing, lots of work to do around that. I think some of the technology is moving faster than we can keep up with. So simple stuff like the recent kind of Microsoft Agents things, I think they've deployed in a lot of their Excel, PowerPoint, Word and so on, looks to be really useful. But again, what are the kind of pros and cons of using those sorts of things? So there's sort of stuff that I think a lot of organizations are going through in terms of their experimentation and work through there. The second area, I think, where we've probably been building on what I was talking about earlier, where we've moved into firstly the machine learning world, and it's more at that end of it than the AI. A lot of the kind of machine vision side of stuff. So we've got multiple places where we've either procured systems that have the ML built into them. So we work with Viva City, for example, doing a lot of counting classification using video technology in order to undertake some of our transport planning activities. So that ability to bring you more 24/7 data with, in particular, classifications around pedestrians, micromobility, those sorts of things, and the ability to adapt as you look at different types and ways that people are moving. We are utilizing some of the machine learning kind of algorithms through some of the Python stuff for data quality checking. As we get that data in, we're still looking at what are the kind of anomalies where things are either misclassified, incorrectly counted, so on and so forth. So we're doing some experimentation on there in terms of classic statistics, as Alex said earlier, really, but how can we speed up some of the application of that? And the other big thing in terms of the machine vision side of stuff, again, using some of the either aerial photography or some of our drone captured imagery, counting and classifying vehicles for things like parking surveys around park and ride sites, that sort of stuff, where residents may be experiencing problems, using a combination of what the image shows us, detecting the vehicles, pushing through some of the underlying data around what's the actual ownership of land underneath. Is it private land? Is it publicly available land? Doing some kind of standard GIS type application there, really. And some of that is where we're really seeing that shift from the sort of specialist techniques into the commoditized world, really. So we're able to pick and choose some of the algorithms that we want and use them in some of the tool sets that we're already doing. So what I'm trying to do with my staff now is ensure that we understand things like benchmarking, the pros and cons of the model. So you need that statistical understanding so you know how to use the tools that you're deploying. Very early days on that, putting a lot of people through apprenticeships and various other upskilling courses, but so we can responsibly evaluate what we've got, which I think is delaying some of it going into our business as usual and delivering some of those productivity gains that people are really looking for. But yeah, on that journey, on that path. So that's what we're doing in the work sort of environment.
Let me jump in, Stu. So if I were to summarize and say, it seems like on some of the, I don't know, taking notes of meetings, drafting up briefing notes and written reports, that is in sort of experimentation, trying things out phase, basically, which I think that would be quite familiar to lots of people across the public sector. That it's not always in use by everyone every day, and there are various reasons for that, which we'll come back to in a little bit. Where some of the progress has been for specific, and often it sounds like grant funded programs. You've gone out and worked with vendors or partners who you can bring that, like Vivacity, and you can bring that technology to bear for a specific task, for a specific project. And some of those are actually now operational and happening every day and really working very well. But some of the kind of, I guess, office productivity stuff is still a little bit more in pilot kind of stage. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is, the grant funding thing has allowed the experimentation to happen, like you say, with not just providers, but also universities as well. So where there's some expertise there, we can lean into that where we've got gaps in our knowledge. The internal productivity, I think, is a function of a little bit of nervousness about deploying these things. I've seen people already having to lock down some of the Microsoft agentic AI stuff where there's a keen dabbler in some corner or at home nowadays, more likely, producing things that people go, hang on a minute, that's not working how it's supposed to. You know, you're hacking the system, really, sort of thing. So there's a lot of that sort of stuff. I know we'll come on to the policy bits a little bit later, but it's certainly opened up a can of worms that need a little bit of testing, experimentation, and learning how to responsibly use it.
That's great. All right, let's jump over to Alex now. I didn't give you a chance for your informal one, Stu, but we'll come back to that stuff. Alex, break it down for us into, if you wouldn't mind, internal productivity type progress and try and be really concrete. Like what are you doing within the firm on note-taking apps and drafting and Copilots and things like that? Then talk to us about some of the really sophisticated stuff that you are building, developing yourselves and taking out to clients. And then let's definitely have, how do you use it at home for whatever else you use it for? That would be great.
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely see those two different buckets in what we're doing in Arcadis. So yeah, I mean, we have Copilot as soon as that came out. Then I mean, we're very lucky. We've kind of structured ourselves with central global teams in our IT group that have kind of budget that comes in from each country to then be able to test things on behalf of the whole organization. So a lot of kind of the journey that we've been through is actually, how do we adapt the organization to be able to respond efficiently and effectively to all this technological change. But yeah, I mean, part of that has been we've set up our own internal Arcadis ChatGPT, Arcadis GPT. So that means that any data that we're putting into it is secure, is not going outside of our firewalls, cannot be searched by anyone in ACOM or WSP or any of our clients or anything like that. So yeah, first of all, making sure that we have that privacy and all of that governance. And I mean, the very first thing we did was set up an AI task force to make sure we got the governance right. But done all, very, very quickly because of that organizational structure. And yeah, from there we've moved on to things like, I mean, how can we use the same apps to accelerate what we're doing in, let's say, writing bids or writing reports. One of the interesting learnings for me, and I think this is a personal observation, I find the AI to be really useful for if I'm using it for a bid, for doing some of the routine stuff like preparing CVs or pen portraits. But when it comes to writing the methodology, which is maybe the first thing that a lot of people jump to, actually, it really struggles there. It gives you something that looks a bit shiny, but when you read it properly, doesn't really have that creative element of how are we going to go and tackle this problem. So that still has to be very much human driven. So yeah, those are kind of some of the internal examples. When I think about some of the, let's say, added value, some of the service enhancements that we've been doing. So yeah, there's a couple that I'll flag that I think relate very specifically to transport planning. But yeah, different, not development planning so much, but yeah, one is around local transport plan optimization or capital plan optimization. So we have an optimizer that allows us to feed in a long list of capital projects. Each project has different strengths like the costs, the risk, the deliverability, and different benefits, some of which are social, some are environmental, some are economic, which will all contribute in different ways to different levels to your strategic objectives as an authority. And the hardest thing is to be able to run trade-offs. So we want to be environmental, but we also want to promote growth. We also want to create inclusivity and accessibility. And sometimes those things can be in competition with another, or in competition with another for certain budgets as well. So how do you run those different trade-offs, and how do you then do it when you've got maybe different budgets, or you don't know how much budget is going to come down, or you've got to respond to new grant applications coming out, or you've got to balance your investment across different areas of your city, or across different modes, or across different neighborhoods? That's actually a really complex problem when you think about it, and it's typically been solved by people manually putting schemes into a spreadsheet based on the ones that tick the most boxes visually. But actually, what we've demonstrated is using optimization algorithms, you can achieve between 10 and 40% more gains across all of your objectives by balancing better between all of your objectives and your costs, picking the right combination of small and big projects that contribute to all those different objectives. So interestingly, I mean, we did it for Birmingham Transport Plan, for example. Just about to start doing it with Transport for London for some of their structures investments. So yeah, lots of applications in mobility. And then the other one that's very close to my heart is around road safety. So this is really a combination of big data. So we take data from both connected vehicles and mobile phones to crowdsource driver behaviors across the whole network. And then again, we use that combination of human expertise. Okay, what is unsafe in what context? To then train an AI model to correlate those unsafe behaviors with past collisions, and essentially, forecast where our collisions most likely to happen next. So it's great. It allows us to move from being a bit reactive, collisions have happened, let's do something, to more proactive. A new development has come up. We've got a completely different mix of vehicle types with deliveries and EVs in this area, and that's actually creating new risks, but now we can get ahead of it.
Yeah, fascinating, isn't it? It's mean, some great use cases we've heard there from each of our different panelists, but the one thing that has come out again and again is that role of the human expert to do the really strategic thinking or high level thinking. So whether it's, finalizing your transport plan after you've done an optimization exercise, whether it's really thinking through a development site and allowing the AI to do the basics, and you have more time to think, how do you really make that work? And I think Stu had examples there again of, how do you weave together that technology with the human aspect there? All right, so use cases, there are lots of them. They're all exciting, but this stuff is really happening and people are doing it today. This is not sort of a hype of, oh, what AI might be able to do in 5 years. It is really, people are doing projects on it right now. But let's talk about some of the risks and worries people have. So Catherine, I'm going to come back to you here. And I've just put up a slide of some of the kind of worries that people have, and generally speaking, the ones at the top in the white boxes tend to be the really immediate questions, certainly that I get asked as an AI company. Where's my data going? What do we do about mistakes? What are my clients going to think about this? What are my stakeholders or residents going to think about this? But then there are some other bigger questions ranging all the way through to, what if AI takes over the whole world and kills us all? And maybe these are slightly kind of longer term questions as well, but just take us back to, you're thinking about doing something on AI, talking with other senior people in the firm. How do you think about those worries and those risks and managing them?
Yeah, one of the biggest conversations that we've had around the business is to do with in particular with non-disclosure agreements that we sign up to. We do have to sign up to those, some of our more sensitive sites. When we're instructed to work on a particularly sensitive site, then we have to be extremely careful. And if, for example, I was appointed by a client on a particularly sensitive site to prepare a feasibility report, and I was using AI to do that, then that might pose a risk in terms of where is that data going. The fact that we've signed up to an NDA, it could put us in a very difficult situation if some data was leaked somehow. So yeah, it has been quite a big topic of conversation, and the company is in the process of developing an AI policy, which will be rolled out across the employees of the business, and how to use it and be cautious about how you use it. And I think one of the things we perhaps discussed with yourself, Andrew, as well, when we took on SchemeFlow was, is there going to be that sort of wall of protection in terms of all these reports that we're producing using SchemeFlow, to make sure that our competitors, for example, WSP, SLR, are they going to be able to obtain some of the information about some of the transport assessments that we've been writing using SchemeFlow? So yeah, it was definitely a number of questions that have crossed our minds in terms of data and where it's going. In terms of mistakes and how can I trust AI, again, it's that case of, you really need to know, particularly when using ChatGPT, you really need to know what you're talking about in the first place. And I was, we're all under pressure, particularly in the consultancy business. Time is money. And the other day, I just quickly typed into ChatGPT, write me a policy section. I can't remember which authority area it was. And as it was providing the written text for me to insert into my report, I quickly noticed that it was wrong. So it's having that, using AI to help you, but also making sure that you're referring to the right policy documentation in the first place, and that you're perhaps just using AI to tweak and streamline what you do, rather than actually relying on it to give you the right answer, if that makes sense.
That's right. And we've had some questions actually in the chat about that's all very well for you to do, Catherine, as someone who's very experienced and you know what you're looking for, or you know what you're looking at. How do you think that's going to play out for people who maybe are starting their careers today and they don't know what good looks like? And have you got any thoughts about what that's going to look like for young people and all of that?
Yeah, and again, we have spoken about this internally in the business, and one of the things that SchemeFlow does for us is it produces our GIS maps, and that has kind of essentially meant that our GIS graduate is no longer required, and having that trained person who uses GIS right at the coalface to produce bespoke maps, are we losing that skill set? Because we can quickly go to SchemeFlow and the outputs will be there. But when it comes to a more complex site where we're master planning, for example, and we're looking to produce a bespoke map, then that can't necessarily be done in SchemeFlow, and we haven't got that GIS consultant there to do that for us. So yeah, again, very good question. And we're balancing things all the time, trying to make sure we've got the right people in the business and we're using the right software, but also we're using the software in a way that helps us sustainably rather than taking the place of an expert that we really need.
Yeah. Thank you. That is very interesting. Now, I'm going to throw it over to Alex now, and I'm going to ask him about some of these, maybe some of these kind of longer term big worries about AI, the climate impact of it. What do you say to people who kind of challenge you on that? Maybe the long-term impact on jobs. Copyright is also an interesting issue. I think a lot of the kind of creative AIs that are generating videos and images, there are a bunch of legal cases going on at the moment suing the AI companies and saying you've basically taken our material to train on it. How do you, when you're talking through with clients or internally, how do you think about some of those big worries about AI?
Yeah, so on the climate one, that's definitely a worry. The energy that these things churn through is absolutely remarkable. Interestingly, our resilience business that do a lot of work around sustainability and water, we've had a huge amount of growth supporting data centers and looking at how we can shift them over to renewable sources of energy. So locating them in the right places, close to water sources for the cooling that can also drive energy usage as well. How can we kind of create, renewability, circular economy there? When it comes to jobs, I only see opportunity. Jobs, skills have to change, but jobs will remain. I'm going to steal a really fascinating example from a really close friend of mine, a chap called Suresh Balaji, he's the chief marketing officer at Lloyds Bank. Check him out on LinkedIn. There's loads of fabulous stuff he posts. But he recently he met Alan Turing and conducted a Turing test in marketing. So they got 3 teams together. They've been doing loads of stuff around AI in marketing. And of course, the fear in marketing, it's the first thing to go. ChatGPT, it creates content, it creates images. That's what marketing people do as well. They put these 3 teams together. One was only allowed to use AI. The other was not allowed to use any AI. And the third was human plus AI. So humans prompting the AI, steering it in a much more kind of creative, orchestrating kind of way. And they were both given a day to develop a brand campaign. And at the end, there was blind scoring of each of the 3 teams. The one that performed the worst was the AI by itself. The one that performed the next was just the humans. And the best was the marketing experts using AI to supercharge their brilliant creative ideas. And it outscored the other two teams substantially on all the metrics as well. So yeah, it's just about how do we use these tools. But yeah, that creativity, what do we need to achieve? What problem do we need to solve? How do we make sure that our solution is aligned to the multitude of stakeholder interests and challenges and local preferences and wider politics? There's so many different ingredients that you need to put in and work your way through to any wicked problem that we try and solve as transport planners. That's not going to go away, but we can solve those in different ways.
Yeah. Good. An uplifting, optimistic view there, Alex. Thanks. So, okay, we've done a little bit about how AI is being used today. We've done a little bit about the worries and the risk and how you think about and manage some of those. Let's talk about getting started. Let's say you've done nothing there, and I'm going to come to Stu actually and ask him, how would you recommend people, and bear in mind there might be some in the private, some in the public sector, what are the first 2 or 3 things you would do to get started on this AI stuff?
So I think I'm not really talking from huge amounts of experience, probably where we're still at, it feels like to me at the moment, because of the things I referred to earlier about really understanding the uses. Most of it's coming through actually rolling your sleeves up and having a go, whether that's in your personal life, whether it's in your work life. And then clearly within your work life, you've got to fit it into the corporate structures that you work in, depending upon which particular organisation that you're at. But I think one of the things I've seen where it's not going so well, I would say, in our place, the deployment of some of the generative AI, some of the Copilot sorts of things, some of the stuff Alex and Catherine referring to about creating stuff and either not checking it or it creates something that I think was maybe missing off one of your previous bits, was blandness that AI produces. And I think that's some of the stuff that, again, Alex was referring to in some of the bids and tenders that they're putting together, do some of the donkey work, but only use it for the creative stuff. I think that's only going to be possible when you actually get hands-on. You learn from others about prompts. What's the right things to write? What is it you're looking for? How to do that kind of, I am this sort of person, I'm looking for this kind of output. These are the things I want you to address. I think that's kind of current sort of skill sets, whether that changes very quickly, as you've seen with the growth of the sort of the deeper research side of things, where it's almost the AI is talking to itself and double checking its content and asking you to think through, and that sort of chain of reasoning. Those things you only learn by having a play with them, really.
Who are the people? I mean, you can personally go and have a play, almost on your own time and experiment with this stuff. And I think that is a clear next step, we would say, for anybody who hasn't done that already. Play with ChatGPT, play with Gemini, play with some of those tools, and they're free to use, and you can get a really good feel really quickly. But in an organization, that's you individually. Who are the people, or how do you sort of mobilize or find the other people who you kind of experiment alongside there, Stu? How have you found that?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of initiatives, I guess, within the workplace at the moment. So alongside our kind of AI policy rollout, trying to educate people around what to do, we've also built together kind of communities of practice, people who've kind of put their hands up and said, this is what I'm doing, I've had a go with this. It's as simple as a Teams chat or something along those lines, and people posting things in there. And inevitably, you get the people who are hands-on playing, have a go with these sorts of things and sharing the knowledge. So I think from that, you can build your kind of your champions, you can determine your business value, those sorts of things. So I think that's a fairly obvious thing that I'm guessing a lot of places are doing as well.
We've heard a lot that there's often a Teams chat that is the prompt, oh, I tried this prompt and here's how it worked, or I found this thing, and people sharing links. And that seems to be quite a good low effort way to firstly connect the people in the workplace who are keen about this stuff, and also just to quickly kind of share some of the knowledge there. Good. Let me throw it back to Catherine and say, any practical advice for people if they're thinking about doing this for the first time? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if I think about how I've used it practically myself, I suppose it's just, as Stu said, just sort of playing around with it. And I feel, I've got sort of ChatGPT on my desktop. Sort of think of it as a little friend, because the sites that we work on, they're so different. They're so many different challenges, different data sets, and if I'm stuck on something, particularly when I'm working from home and I can't just tap a colleague on the shoulder and think, what do you think about this? Quite often just type it into ChatGPT and see what the answer is. So it's as simple as that, just playing with it. And through our involvement with SchemeFlow as well, and having that software usable in the business, playing around with that, and then going back to the guys at SchemeFlow saying, can you do this? So yeah, it's just a case of trial and error, really, in the consultancy world. And I'm sensible enough, got a number of years experience now to know that if something isn't quite right, then I'm not going to put it in a client report. So it's just being sensible, playing around, seeing how it can help you in different ways, but also being cautious and making sure that, for example, if you have got a site where you've signed up to a non-disclosure agreement on behalf of the client, that you're not typing in specific site names when you consult with ChatGPT. So it's about using it sensibly, and as Alex mentioned previously, that sort of joined up approach is not just ChatGPT on its own, not just you on your own, but the actual, you're using it in collaboration with one another.
Yeah, very interesting. Alex, I'm going to ask you a specific version of this question, which is, in large organizations, which many of your clients and the people that you work with will be in, it can sometimes seem really difficult, even if you're keen to do something on AI or experiment. How do you cut through the bureaucracy and make something happen in a large organization? What are the tricks, or where people are really good at that? How do people get things moving in a large organization? Could be public, could be private sector. How have you seen that happen?
Yeah, it can be tricky. Can be very tricky. I mean, we've been through a major reorganization to make it possible. So, I mean, as a company, we used to be organized into different countries, and each country had its own business units like mobility, places, resilience, and each of those business units had its own P&L. And yeah, we ended up, therefore, I mean, money influences who can do what. So we ended up with lots of different countries building the same things in different ways. It was really, really hard to coordinate. So the whole business was actually reorganized. That's how seriously Arcadis took it. We reorganized the whole business globally so that we were then structured not by country, but by discipline. And that meant that mobility could then look at, okay, what are the commonalities between the services that we do for our clients in different countries, and how can we build things? How can we work on things? How can we invest in things that contribute to what we're doing in all these different countries without spending the same money lots of different times. So getting that structure in place, then it kind of reduced all that duplication and fragmentation, but also meant that we had a bit more money to work with. It meant that we could create some roles around helping to catalyze those things as well. Leveraging that global scale to do so.
Yeah, it seems that the M word of money seems to be really important here, which is, you can experiment with these free tools and play around with them, but if you want to get serious on this and take this through to piloting something or taking it seriously, you've got to find the money. And now, whether that comes from a grant, whether it's an internal budget, whether it's you find a way to bake it into a project budget, for example, there are clever ways of doing that. But really, if you're serious about doing something, you need to think, how am I going to pull the money and the resources together to do it? Good, thank you. So we've had some really interesting advice there on that. And we've had really interesting examples from each of our three panelists on where they are up to. but I have a sneak preview of some of the survey results we're starting to get in from the whole of the UK here. And we've already got some interesting results. Excuse the horrible Excel slides. So what we've done here is ask people, how far have they got with AI adoption in their organizations? Ranging from we're not doing anything on AI and not considering it, through trialing, small-scale pilots, limited adoption, and then widespread adoption. And what you can see on the far left is the local authorities and the public sector. In the middle, consultancies, broadly speaking. And then on the right, suppliers. And these are broadly tech companies, tech AI vendors, typically. And you can see a big difference in where people are up to. And as you would expect, maybe the public sector is a little bit slower, a little bit further behind. Although it was interesting to me that there were very few people, even from the public sector, saying, we're not considering or we're not doing anything on AI. You can see lots of people are piloting and limited adoption. Not many people are saying we're doing nothing here. But then on the far right, you can obviously see the suppliers are forging ahead and really using AI in anger. Maybe that's partly as a result of them, many of them being smaller companies and having the flexibility to do that, also being more tech savvy. So very interesting on how tech is rolling. We then ask people, how much of your job do you think will be able to be done by AI in 2 years? And here are the results. Fascinating differences here. So green means my job's okay. 0 to 20% of my job will be able to be done. Dark orange is 80 to 100%. We've had some respondents saying, really, lots and lots of my job we think will be able to be done by AI. And I'm not sure I was expecting this. I'm not sure I was expecting the tech vendors to say that lots of what they do today will be able to be done by AI in the future. So that's just a sneak preview. Interesting data. Please fill in the survey if you haven't done so already. We think it's going to give some really interesting results. You'll see in the survey lots more questions, and we're going to do a full report on this. And then the plan is to repeat this year on year and see how things are changing there. So that's that. Let's have some questions. And I'm going to go first of all to some questions that we have had in the chat. Let's have a look. Q&A. So we had some sent previously. Interesting. AI isn't about ChatGPT and large language models. What other applications are there? Alex spoke earlier. You heard about optimization. Stuart heard about kind of image classification. I think they are not really large language model applications there. So we've had a couple of examples there. 3 years after the launch of ChatGPT, it's still early days. Is it worth it to be an early adopter? I'm going to throw that back over to our panel here. I'm going to ask Catherine, actually, what do you think? Is it worth it being an early adopter of this, or is it worth waiting?
Yeah, a good question. I think it's about using caution and being sensible. I think in terms of what we've adopted so far, using SchemeFlow, just sort of structuring reports, isn't really much risk in that. And it's about balancing the risk and, taking what you can from the technology. All of our reports have to go through an auditing process at the end of the day before they're released to clients. So it's making sure that you've not asked ChatGPT to write some drivel and that's going to go out to a client and the client's going to think, what the heck is this? And it's not really going to, at the end of the day, it's not really going to do the job because it's not going to be sufficient to submit alongside a planning application. So it's just being sensible, I think, at the end of the day. And I think being an early adopter means that you're understanding the technology that's available and kind of being at the front of new ideas and thinking about how you can help it to drive your business forward. It's, again, as I said before, consultancy is all about time and selling time. What we do is sell time. So time is money. So how can we make things more efficient? How can we, deliver more outputs without taking on risk?
That makes a lot of sense. I always think that there's I think very few people are asking that you dive straight away from the top diving board into AI. You sort of dip your toe and then maybe you sort of slide in at the shallow end and then you sort
Yeah,
of take it gradually. And that was your approach, wasn't it? I mean, we think we did a pilot
yeah,
together,
I've
didn't
been a
we?
bit like that. Yeah,
3 months and
good way of
you sort
describing
of
it.
kind of see how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've actually, helped you develop the software in a way as well by saying,
Yeah.
well, actually, can it do this? And we've added extra functions into it as we've been going along. So yeah, I think if you don't experiment, you'll never get anywhere if you don't give it a try.
Yeah.
But equally, you've got to be careful about taking it on too quickly.
That's right. Let's throw it to Stu now. Stu, in the public sector, obviously there are different set of stakeholders there, and traditionally you would assume it was more risk averse in this stuff. Early adopter advantages in the public sector versus disadvantages. How do you think about that?
So there's a lot of activity happening. So I'm sort of able to go to some of the central government discussions, meet with some of the chief data officers from across the different departments, and there are differing levels of maturity and sort of attempts at adoption and approaches across the central government departments, and then you can multiply that many times over when dealing within the sort of local government world as well. So I think you see a full spectrum, very much dependent upon, in some cases, individuals within those areas who is able to make and articulate the case and push it forward. And then equally, where you've got people who are perhaps a little more kind of need to sit back, think, understand what's happening, learn from others, be first follower, be a later follower. So you're seeing the full spectrum of this, which I think is probably reflective of what you get across much of society, to be perfectly honest with you. In terms of those moving forward, things like the incubator AI out of central government, I think are proving to be very helpful, although very quickly superseded by what some of the commercial market can do. So I think we have to work out our place in some of this in terms of how much are we driving, how much are we enabling change, how much are we building, how much are we consuming from commoditized AI. And I think that is still being worked through. But if you look at some of the things like Redbox, for example, from Incubator AI, very, very quickly, those sorts of things have been superseded by commercial models that are available for people just to pick up, plug in, use, the ability to go into any of the cloud providers, choose the model that you want, making a difference. Same with some of the GIS platforms as well. You can choose those sort of machine learning vision models as well. So I think that it will come in at different points in different places. My personal view is I think that we still need to spend more time as a public sector using lots of the tools to help accelerate some of the basic things that we have to do around data management, organization, and then having the skill sets of the people who understand what those models are telling us. So as we start to use foundational models, we've got people who understand what some of those benchmarking sort of statistics mean, those sorts of things, so we can understand how to apply it correctly. And that has already changed from people who perhaps were the statistics and data scientists wanting to train models and build models themselves and so on. So it's about picking those right things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. And it also seems to me that you don't have to do that much to really be one of the leading public sector organizations doing something really exciting on AI. I mean, there's quite an opportunity there. And with that comes the opportunity to get the funding to then go further and really, doing one or two really thought through pilots that are actually specific to your organization. This is something that can be quite exciting for someone, almost make your career as an innovative person thinking in new ways about your job. Is that fair, Stu?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. There's a I think a big open goal, to be perfectly honest with you, with some of this sort of stuff. I do think though it's probably falling into a similar problem area in terms of that promotion and adoption, that previous technology initiatives have had within the public sector anyway. And I do think that there hasn't been a pervasive understanding of how to do the test, pilot, scale kind of approach from the kind of initiatives taken years ago under digital transformation. And that has been a result, I think, of lack of kind of investment and training at some of the senior levels of understanding what these things can do. They're still very much dependent upon suppliers explaining what some of the benefits could be, and then they equate it back to some of the sort of things that I don't fully agree with. Where can jobs be sort of got rid of, etc. So there's a discussion here that I think unfortunately replays what's happened before, and that's the sort of stuff we've got to get over in terms of the challenges.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I have been interested to note in the last, especially since the new government came in, that the government has been pretty vocally, uniformly positive about the use of AI in the public sector. I'm really trying to push it and really trying to encourage it. And, lots of speeches, lots of announcements of how we're doing more on this, some money as well to kind of back that up. And that's been interesting. I think that was not a given 3 years ago, that a Labour government will come in and be so positive about it. But I do think that presents, an opportunity about some of that. We've had a question from the panel, which I'm going to ask Alex, which is the UK claims to want to be a leader, sort of world leading at AI. How do we stack up internationally? But how do you even decide if you are a leader in AI, or which parts of AI should we be trying to be a leader in? Just some thoughts on the UK and the international perspective there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge question. I mean, I think we're doing some good stuff. I mean, we've got investment from some of the Googles and the Microsofts in the world. We've got things like DeepMind that, of course, was UK based and laid the platform for a lot of what Google is doing. And yeah, I mean, the government's making lots of positive noises, positive investments. I think we've got a great startup ecosystem. I think if I look in what we're doing in civil engineering, though, more specifically, and our part of the world, I really like the way that it's gone in the UK, because I think we are naturally conservative as engineers. I mean, we don't want our bridges to fall down, right? That's a sensible approach. So I think we've also been, quite cautious in terms of understanding what is this technology, where can we use it, is it robust, if it's, let's say, used for data collection, is it giving us reliable data? And we think about some of the asset management use cases, so using video analytics to collect, say, pavement condition and defects, and now we've got the PASS standard that's come out. So I mean, that's great, right? It gives us those benchmarks. It gives us what does quality look like, and it also means that we're now getting to the point where we can start to trust some of these apps, because we know it's not kind of based on anyone's kind of subjective judgment. There's a standard to refer back to. So that's a great example, I think, of the maturity curve that in one kind of small corner of the engineering and AI world that we've been on that growth, and now we've got some of these new technologies. It's giving us more data. Maybe we don't have to go and survey the road and have people just driving around roads and walking up and down roads and looking at pavement as much, but those jobs haven't gone away. Those are now, okay, let's get out and get the roads fixed, or let's look at where do we invest our money, or let's use this data to work out how do we optimize our whole life cost across the network. So yeah, I think we are measured, but I think particularly in our industry where we need to be measured, I think we're going really well.
Brilliant. Well, I love it. On that positive note, I think we shall wrap up. We could keep going for hours on these questions. There's a whole bunch of things we haven't got to in the chat. My advice for you is get the date in your diary, 30th of January in Birmingham. These discussions continue and will go in greater depth. And one of the best things actually about this conference, which we've done a couple of years now, is there'll be brilliant sessions and workshops, but actually the opportunity to grab 2 minutes over coffee with somebody who really knows what they're talking about on this and asking about your personal situation can be really, really useful as well. So thank you very much to everybody for attending. Thank you to our brilliant panelists, who I hope you will agree have done a great job in telling their story. We got some claps and some hearts going on here. Thank you very much. And there we are. Really encourage you to come to the conference, and please also fill in this survey for our State of AI report today. So that's it. Really optimistic. The UK is a world leader in AI and transport technology. What a vision to go out on. Thank you very much for attending. Have a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and I shall see you all in Birmingham in January. Thank you.